Today's podcast is sponsored by Fire Facilities Incorporated, expert engineers, designers, and manufacturers of steel training towers, burn rooms, and mobile units that are all made in the USA. Welcome back to 3-Point Firefighter. Today's guest is Chief Eric Dreiman. Now, Eric has been a firefighter since 1990. He's served in every rank from the firefighter up to division chief. He is currently the chief of training at Indianapolis Fire Department. He holds multiple fire and EMS certifications and has a Bachelor's of Science from Indiana University and a degree in fire science from Vincennes University. Eric teaches at FDIC, Fire Expo, Firehouse World, and other regional conferences. He's a contributor to Fire Engineering Magazine. He travels across the U.S. teaching a lot of classes, and he's taught over thousands of firefighters in his career. Chief Dreiman, thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Well, so to let people know, I met you in Indianapolis. I was taking, I took the nozzle forward class, and then like a day or two later, we did the basement fire class, and you were the host for that. And I remember, and all the instructors were talking about what a fantastic host you were. You were going all over the map for us. I mean, we'd ask you for one thing, you'd go get it. Then we'd ask you for another. And at no time did you seem aggravated or anything. You were just about the chillest person there was. I mean, we'd say, hey, we need a couple fire extinguishers. You're like, okay. Hey, we need some more pallets. You're like, okay. You at no time did you seem kind of like, oh man, they're running me ragged. You were one of the best hosts ever. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
So I'd like to start off by having my guests tell me a little bit about themselves in the fire department they're at and where they fit in with that.
Well, as you mentioned, I'm with the Indianapolis Fire Department. I'm currently the chief of training, which in our organization is a division chief, which is, everybody's division chiefs mean a little bit different. So I'm one grade above the level of battalion chief. So I've been in that position since 2016. Before I came into the training division, spent the first 22 years of my career at Indianapolis on the street, as a line firefighter and officer. Most of my experience is in truck companies. Spent several years on truck companies throughout my career. I drove a battalion chief for about 6 or 7 years, which was a huge learning opportunity for me. I learned so much about the job and being a leader and being a manager and everything else. As you said, I travel a lot, teach a lot. The Indianapolis Fire Department itself is roughly 1,300 firefighters. We've got 44 firehouses, roughly 300 people on duty every day, maybe a little over 300. Training division's, in my opinion, a great place to work. I enjoy my time with the people that I work with. There's myself, a battalion chief who's the assistant director of the training division, and then there are 9 captains in the training division who are actually, the quote unquote instructors in the training division, whose role it is to day in and day out deliver training, whether it's to our existing firefighters or to our new firefighters in our fire academy.
Now, Indianapolis is kind of unique in the sense that they've kind of like, how do you say it? Got other departments in the county and they've acquired them, right? Mm-hmm. But not every department in the county has joined. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so originally I'm an example of that. Back in January 1st of 2007, the Washington Township Fire Department was merged, rolled into, whatever you want to call it, into the Indianapolis Fire Department. So I've been technically with the Indianapolis Fire Department since 2007, when my previous fire department, the Washington Township Fire Department, was merged with IFD. The whole time, obviously it's all Indianapolis, but there were different jurisdictions. So over the course of 3 or 4 years, all the other departments in the county, with the exception of three. We have three townships that have not merged with Indianapolis. Those are on the west side of the county. If all in all, if every department in the county were to merge, we'd be probably around 16 or 1,700 firefighters in all. So, and
Wow.
60 stations probably. So
what's the holdout? They want more money. You guys were being too cheap. Is that it?
no, well, it's part of it's territory. I mean, a lot of things happen when you merge people into an organization. That means that all of that organization's administrative positions go away.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially some of their their other appointed positions would go away. Certainly there's a political component to it. You have township trustees who are political folks in and of themselves, and they have their own territorial concerns with that. Some of it's pride, pride in the organization, pride in the fact that they are their own independent fire department, and you're going to lose some of that identity if your fire department suddenly goes away and you become part of a larger organization. So there's not any one thing. I'm sure finances, on both sides of the equation, whether it's the city of Indianapolis or those departments that haven't merged, there's pros and cons financially, I'm sure, for all of those folks as well. But it's a combination of different things. But all in all, we all run, despite the fact that there are still three departments on the west side of the county that are quote unquote independent, we all run and operate off of the same fireground policies and procedures. We all use the same rules, regulations, policies, all that sort of stuff when it comes to making emergency runs and responding to the community's needs. So as far as the community is concerned, there may be engines or ladders from more than one fire department in front of their house if it's on fire, but they're never going to know the difference in the way we do our job. So
would I be wrong in assuming would I be wrong in assuming that the IFD is much like the Roman Empire, and they're slowly just going to roll in, crush their spirits and will, and then take them and add them on? Or is that a little too dramatic? Is that too dramatic? It sounded dramatic.
That was dramatic, but no, I mean, there are independent political entities. There's no way, that we would never, I know that just knowing how our organization is, how our organization operates, we would not want to, quote unquote, pull off a hostile takeover, like, one corporation buying another one and that sort of thing, So it would be a joint experience, but they're all independent political jurisdictions, so there really wouldn't be any way for them to be forced into it, short of maybe some sort of action at the state level if the state legislature were to pass some bill and turn it into a law that says they must merge with us. But I think if it ever does happen, it will be a mutual agreement between everybody that's involved. It won't be the big kid on the block, just taking the little kids' lunch money or something like that. So, well,
so I'm in New Albany, which is all the way south of Indiana, which is about an hour and a half away. We're assuming that Indiana, the IFD, is going to take over the entire state. So we've built like a 30-foot wall, and we've got archers on the top of it, and we're going to fight. I'm not going to lie. We're going to fight. We may not win, but we're going to fight. So when people think of like a fire department mecca, they'll think like FDNY, Chicago, Boston, LA. But the truth of it is, if you think about it, IFD probably is, because not only do you have a big department, you have the FDIC there every year, and you also have FDTN right there in Indianapolis too. So does that put any extra pressure on IFD? Are they sort of like, obviously they have to be part of these things, especially FDIC, So what does IFD do, say, for the FDIC first? What does IFD have to do to help the fire department instructor conference every year?
Well, we have very close working relationship with fire engineering and all those folks that that manage that conference. We provide a lot of logistical support, behind the scenes support, things like we provide EMS coverage for a lot of the hot classes. We provide transportation for all the different instructors and folks coming in from out of town, as far as getting them from the airport to their hotels and getting them around town, everything like that. Certainly we provide our personnel and our apparatus to assist in whatever capacity that would be needed. Obviously, being the host agency, we have a lot of contacts within the city that we can use and leverage to help FDIC and fire engineering be successful in their efforts, whether it's helping them locate sites for the hands-on classes, or helping them secure additional classroom space, providing personnel, manpower. You know, it's multifaceted as far as all the different things that we do for them.
Now, I got to imagine during the week of FDIC, you've got to get some drunk people rolling into your stations and telling you how all your hose loads are screwed up. That's got to happen. Tell me I'm wrong. You don't use the Minuteman? Oh my God.
Sometimes. Yeah. Some of our downtown stations certainly get, those stations get the brunt of that during FDIC. Honestly, I've never had a bad experience, at least when I've been on duty, with a visitor from out of town that's in town for FDIC. You know, everybody, you're always going to have your goofballs or your people that are going to get in trouble no matter where they're at. But for the most part, everybody does a really good job of behaving themselves. And honestly, I think a lot of people are very impressed when they come into town to see how nice our apparatus are, how professional the firefighters here in Indianapolis are, how they go out of their way to help people. So all in all, I think that those experiences, if I'm sure they've happened, never happened to me in my time here, but they're few and far between, I guess, is the easiest way to say it.
That's good. That's good. But what about FDTN? So if somebody's listening to this and they don't know what FDTN, the Fire Department Training Network, is, go ahead, pause the podcast, Google that shit, get back on here. Do you all have any kind of relationship with them? Because, I mean, it was started from an ex-IFD guy, right?
That's correct. Jim McCormick is the owner of FDTN. He was with Indianapolis for well over 20 years, 25 years. I don't remember the exact number. He retired a few years ago from the fire department, and now he focuses solely on his what I would consider to be his passion, which is FDTN. It's one of the, if not the premier firefighter training facilities in the United States. The quality of instructors they bring in out there, the quality of education and training and hands-on opportunities you get out there are second to none. IFD does have a relationship with FDTN, and over the years we have sent quite a few of our recruit schools through GYMS or FDTN's 5-day firefighter survival and Mayday class. That all depends upon when we're having a recruit school and where that falls, where that training falls within our schedule, and whether or not he has the ability to accommodate us. If he doesn't have anything else scheduled, then it's a little bit easier than if he's already got programs in his pipeline that he's booking and promoting. Sometimes that doesn't work out. But yes, we do have a good relationship with him. I consider him a friend, colleague, someone that I could go to if I needed to ask a question or get some support, things like that.
So much like you, I'm a training instructor, and I think all instructors have trouble making it realistic, making training realistic for a lot of reasons. Sometimes it's SOG, sometimes it's policies, but I think deep down it all boils down to safety. We as training instructors still have to toe that line of safety because the number one rule is nobody gets hurt in training. Then you've got other classes that are, like I teach 1403 and we do 1403 training. So it's like a Venn diagram. You're not getting realistic training sometimes when you have to follow 1403. You're getting safe training. You're getting great training. Don't get me wrong. So if it's a Venn diagram, the dead center to me would be Fire Department Training Network, because everybody I've heard that's ever gone up there has just said it's the most realistic training that they've ever had. So, you get training instructors, you got 1403 compliant, and then right in the middle, you've got that FDTN. So that's pretty impressive. I would love to go up there. I'm getting older, so I don't know that if my bones could take it, but I would love to go up there. I would love to go up there. You talked about sending your classes through. Tell me about so you're in charge of all the new recruits for IFD, right? How
Correct.
hard is it to actually have a successful functioning fire academy with such a large department, and I assume large groups of recruits?
Yeah, we have, normally our class sizes run anywhere from 50 to 70 recruit firefighters.
Wow.
Our academy's 28 weeks long. They go through EMT, hazmat awareness and ops, tech rescue awareness, vehicle machinery ops, and then of course firefighter 1 and 2. It's an extremely manpower intensive undertaking to run the academy. And I'd be lying if I said that, I'm the chief of training, yes, but it's really those nine captains that I mentioned to you earlier as far as the structure within the training academy. Those guys are just tremendous. Their sense of dedication, their commitment to the recruits, and to seeing those recruits be successful is second to none. I always, when I came into the training division, I wanted to make sure that the people that were in the training division were folks who had been on the street, who had done the job, who'd made the runs, who had good reputations, who were there for the right reasons, and so I always make a point when we bring in somebody new, I always have a pretty long talk with them about what I expect of them, how the training division itself needs to be perceived, how the training division is perceived, whether they believe it or not. And then we carry that message on to our recruits. And we run a very regimented, formal recruit academy. We hold our recruits to a very high standard. We have a handful of guys that are in the training division now that are served in the military. So, it starts from day one with how to polish your boots, how to iron your uniform, your gig line, all that sort of stuff. I lay them out my expectations of them, which is I have my what I call the 2 R's and 2 T's, which are reputation, respect, teamwork, and trust. Those are the 4 things.
I like that.
If you do those 4 things right, then you'll have a successful fire academy and you'll have a successful career. But I'm also very upfront with them, and I tell them that, look around the room, because everybody that's sitting here today more than likely is not going to be here to walk across the stage and get their badge pinned on them. And that might be because you decide this job's not for you, or it might be because we decide this job's not for you. We don't sugarcoat it. We don't say, hey man, this is a rubber stamp. You got through the perf physical and you're golden for 20 years minimum. We don't do that. And we will, we let everybody know that right up front. Training academies, all the cadre staff's on board with that philosophy. And I've got great support above me in the administration all the way up to the chief of the department. So having that support from the top down, and then having everybody pulling in the same direction with the same mindset, with the same level of professionalism, really goes a long way to turning out a good product. Our product in this case is young firefighters or new firefighters. But to say that it doesn't take a lot of work, I'd be lying. I mean, just from when you were up in Indianapolis, and I know you've run recruit academies as well, but just being up in Indianapolis and that basement fire class, in the grand scheme of things, is nothing compared to a 28-week academy, and all the logistics that goes along with that. And like I said, I've got great people. The guys that I work with in the training division, they're just top notch. I can't say enough good things about them.
So what do you think is your percentage that you actually graduate each group? Because you got to have a couple knuckleheads each group that you got to cut out. So what is your percentage, you think?
Oh, it's still very, very high. It's in the 90s probably. And we don't, some organizations, I know of organizations who will hire, so they bring in 60 recruits knowing that they've only got spots for 50 of them. So they know they're going to weed out the 10 weakest. We don't do that. If we have a vacancy list that says, hey, we need to hire 65 firefighters, then we're going to hire 65 firefighters. But if either we decide or they decide that their time with the Indianapolis Fire Department should end, then it will. And normally I'd say we've averaged in my tenure, we normally average 2 or 3. I think one class we had up to 4. And that's out of a class of somewhere between 50 and 70. So it's not like it's not like buds where you're starting with 250 and you're ending with 50 or something like that, in SEAL training. But just knowing that is on the table, and I have that option, that my hands aren't tied, and that, I can't, some departments, once you're on, and there's nothing that it's like takes an act of God to get somebody fired. That's not the case for me.
I'm not commenting on that. Just want you to know I am not commenting on what you just said. So I want certain people that listen to this podcast to be very, very proud of me. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I had to throw it in there. So I've got an idea for you for IFD, and you don't have to pay me that much money for this idea, but
okay,
I can get your classes up to 100% graduation, and you again pay me, I'm guessing about $200 a group. Every time you have a new recruit group, we'll do this. You have me come up, I will show up about 2 minutes late, and then you scream and yell at me and fire me on the spot in front of everybody. And then I'll say, like, whatever, dude. And then I'm gone. And then you'll put the fear of God of everybody in the first 5 minutes of your class. It costs you 200 bones, put it in my pocket. I drive an hour and a half south. Everybody's happy. Don't say no. Just think about it. I think it's a good idea. Yeah. So what got you?
I'll look at my budget and see if I can.
You can pay me in like Chipotle gift cards. I don't care. Microbrews, something like that. I'm sure you can work it in. I'm just trying to help IFD. I'm less worried about the money. I just want to help. Because again, you guys are going to take over all of the state. So let me ask you this. After your new recruits get out on the streets, what other training is expected of them? Do they have a whole year before they're officially part of the crew, or do they have to keep coming back to training ever so often to reinforce stuff?
Okay, yeah, once they graduate from the academy, they're assigned to one of our 3 shifts. And then before they leave the academy, each recruit is issued a probationary firefighters field training officer manual or field training manual. And basically, we have firefighters on the shifts that we refer to as field training officers, and they're placed in all the different battalions within IFD. And those field training officers are responsible for continuing the education of those newly graduated probationary firefighters, so to speak. So the manual is divided into four parts. So every quarter of their probationary year, and that's one thing about us that's kind of unique. Some departments, you know, technically you're on probation for your first fiscal year or first calendar year that you're in on the job. So if you get hired March 1st of this year, then March 1st of 22, you're off probation. It's not that way for us. Your probation doesn't start until the day after you graduate from the academy. And then you have a full year after that where you're still on probation and can be fired for more or less any reason, you know, that the chief sees fit. So technically a person is not off probation for about 18 months from the day they get hired until their first full year on the street is concluded. But over that full year that they're on their first full year on the street, that manual is divided into four parts, 4 different quarters, and each quarterly objective, there's a list of quarterly objectives, normally 10 to 15 different skills that they need to demonstrate and practice with a field training officer. There's also typically a handful of policies or administrative things that we feel that it would be good for them to review one-on-one with a field training officer. And then at the end of each quarter, they're required to submit that paperwork signed off by a field training officer back to us. And then we keep track of their progress throughout their first year on the job, on shift. In addition to that, every day that a probationary firefighter is on duty, the company officer, and if there's a field training officer in the firehouse, FTO will also do this. They fill out an electronic form on that probationary firefighter at the end of the shift. Things like, you know, did they show up on time? Did they introduce themselves? Did they participate in daily activities? Did they perform well on EMS runs? Did they perform well on fire runs? There's a box for comments that the officer or the FTO can write down if there are, you know, a lot of times it's positive things. It's not always negative if there's comments, but sometimes there will be comments that aren't what we want to see. Maybe it's the person had a bad attitude, person didn't follow orders. You know, it could be a number of different things, but all that documentation, whether it's those quarterly objectives or it's those daily evaluations, electronic evaluation sheets that get submitted through the department email, all of those come back to the training division. I get a copy of them. The assistant director of the academy gets a copy of them, and the lead instructor for the fire academy gets a copy of those. So there's 3 sets of eyes that look at all of those documents every morning. It's one of the first things, at least for me, when I come in the morning, the first things I do is I go to my in basket and I look at all those probationary reviews. And if we have a review for somebody that says, hey, this person had a bad attitude, this person's been, you know, the last 2 days he's been at my firehouse, he or she's shown up 30 minutes late for work, you know, all those sorts of things. Next thing that happens is somebody from the training division is going to either pay that probationary firefighter a visit, or they're going to get a phone call from us. And it's not to write them up. It's not meant to be punitive, but it's like, hey, you know, what's up? What's going on here? You weren't trained this way. Where's the disconnect? And we'll have that conversation with them. And a lot of times, either maybe the probationary firefighter didn't realize they came off the way they did. You know, maybe they didn't realize that they were being perceived the way they were, or, you know, it could be a number of different things. But oftentimes, it's been my experience anyway, that just letting them know that they're being watched, that we're aware that there was an issue, it fixes itself after that. Just, you know, having that ability to talk to them and let them know, hey, you know, we don't appreciate this, and this won't be tolerated, basically. So
now, I happen to know one of your probationary firefighters, and I can only assume, you know, Joshua Ruckel, I can only assume that he's late every day. He's been nothing but a problem for the IFD. I'm sure he talks back and doesn't follow rules. Would I be wrong? Or
I can tell you that in the academy, he was a model recruit. And I don't recall having any negative reviews on him after he graduated. So,
well, all kidding aside, you won't. He's one of the finest there is. I've taught some classes with him. I know him. He is an excellent hire. I'm only upset that he didn't even try to get on my department. He had to go to the big fancy IFD, but he's a fine human being, a fine firefighter. I'm just going to make sure when I post this, I'm going to tag him in it. So he has to at least watch all or listen to all this podcast just so he can see where he fits in. So,
okay.
Joshua, when you're listening to this, buddy, much love, much love. So let me switch gears on here a little bit. So you go around to these conferences and teach. What are you teaching at these conferences?
I teach a few different classes. I teach vendor search at FDIC. I've been the lead instructor for that for about the last 8 or 10 years now. We've got a hot class that we do. Then I also lecture on DES at Fire Engineer FDIC. I'm sorry, excuse me. And then for Firehouse Magazine, I've done some leadership classes. I've also done some VES classes for them. I've been down to Massey. A lot of people may be familiar with that, down in Atlanta, the Metropolitan Atlanta Firefighters Conference, and taught some engine and truck company operations down there. Taught VES down there as well. I'm kind of, VES is kind of my niche. Truck work is my niche. That's what I like to do. I've always been one of those people that was a proponent for VES, and I think a lot of people, I think less now than maybe 10, 15 years ago, but VES used to be looked at as like a big city thing. It was a reckless, dangerous, hot dog technique, and it's really not. It's just no different than going to the roof and cutting a pinhole or pulling a hose and going down a set of basement stairs to put a fire out. It's just all a matter of having the training and the understanding of what you're getting yourself into. So that's a lot of.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead, sir.
No, and then I do contract teaching where I go around the state or around the country and teach at different fire departments, and I've do a lot of written Mayday classes for departments, squad company classes, which is an engine and a truck all in one with special rescue thrown in on like a cherry on top. So do a lot of those classes. I really enjoy doing leadership classes. That's one of the things that I really like. I've been developing more of those over the years. So, it's a wide range of things. I try and stay away from the hose only because I can do it. I would like to think my skills are at least average when it comes to engines and hose and stuff like that, but it just never was my niche. It was trucks and the truck work and that sort of stuff was always my niche. So.
Well, and that was my question. So you're a truck guy, but you have 2 college degrees. My question is this: was it hard to find an engine guy to read you all those books?
It was, man, but it's one thing about camaraderie. They're more, they step up, they each take a chapter. They'll highlight some stuff for me, and as we go along and circle things to make sure that I knew where the important information was. So, yeah, they helped me out a lot.
Bless their hearts. So tell me a little bit about company officer development. You like leadership, you teach it. Tell me about that.
Well, I've always, not always, but the higher I've gone in my current organization and the more time I spend in the fire service, traveling around and talking to people, the more I realize that we have not been setting up our firefighters for success when they get promoted. We have not been providing them the training on the front end. And I was a perfect example of that. I got promoted to lieutenant in 2000. And yes, I took a test. Yes, I scored well. Yes, I went through an interview process, scored well in that. They handed me a badge. I went through a promotion ceremony, and then suddenly I'm a lieutenant on the street charged with 3 other people. And it wasn't until that point that I realized that this was going to be a lot of on-the-job training, right? So, you know, and I had all the certifications, and, you know, both of us being from Indiana, you know, I had Fire Officer 1, Fire Officer 2, Strategy and Tactics, Instructor, all that stuff. And those are all good certifications. But in my opinion, those certifications teach us how to manage things. They don't teach us how to lead people, right?
Right.
So what we've done and what I want to do more of, I'll start off with what we've done in Indianapolis, and it was at the request of our chief, Chief Malone, asked me when I first came into the training division about 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago. He wanted to develop an officer candidate school. So you hear OCS or officer candidate school, particularly people in the military. I think that's probably a term that they'd be more familiar with than maybe somebody in the fire service. But what we did was we developed 3 separate classes. OCS is 1, 2, and 3. OCS 1 is for lieutenants, OCS 2 is for captains, and OCS 3 is for battalion chiefs. So if you want to be a lieutenant or you want to be a captain, then you know what classes you need to take through IFD on top of all the state certs that we require you to have in order to get promoted. But throughout the course of those classes, we teach you all the managerial things. You know, we teach you how to, you know, fill out a disciplinary form, how to counsel people, all that sort of stuff. But what we've done is taken a lot. We always bring in people from the street to help teach these classes because we want people that have the experience and the time on the job that you need in order to understand what it means when you've got a firefighter that comes in and tells you that he got home from his part-time job the night before and the house was empty and his wife had left him. You know, those are the kind of things that you're not going to learn how to deal with in firefighter or in Fire Officer 1 or 2 or ever, right? So we're trying to take all of those different, you know, the leadership, and you know, servant leadership's a buzzword these days and has been
Right.
for some time, but trying to make our officers more successful before they ever get promoted to the rank they aspire to. So we're trying to front load them with as much information as we can about how to deal with difficult circumstances, difficult situations. Certainly there's a fireground component to our OCS classes and emergency scene management and incident command and all those sorts of things that we historically think about when we think about the fire department. But we've also expanded that to add communication and communication skills and styles and dealing with different generations. And so, you know, over the course, it's still, you know, in the scheme of things in a fire department, particularly one that's been around as long as ours, it's still kind of in its infancy. You know, it's only a little over 5 years old, but it's certainly, I think, benefited a lot of the people that have gone through it to help them to be better leaders. So, you know, that's how we do it in Indianapolis. As far as me personally, what I always try and do is when I talk about leadership or company, you know, officer, small unit leadership, things like that, I start out by explaining to people that, you know, they aren't there for you, you're there for them. You know, that you've got 3 people that you work for now. You don't have 3 people working for you because ultimately you're responsible for what happens to them, right? You're their boss, certainly you're their supervisor, but at the end of the day, you're their caretaker. You know, you
Right.
can make sure they may not want to wear their mask on it, but it's your responsibility to be the hard ass and tell them how you're going to wear your mask in this fire or when you're overhauling. You know, different things like that. And then you're also there to be supportive of them and make sure that they know that if they have issues, they have trouble, questions, concerns, whatever it might be, they can come to you.
Today's podcast was sponsored by Fire Facilities, designers and manufacturers of realistic, built-to-last training structures and mobile units for 30 years. Make training count. Visit firefacilities.com for more information.